Right, a quick heads up before this week's episode. This one's a bit longer than our usual podcast because we're sitting down with Sullivan, the founder of the OCB, the Organisation of Competitive Bodybuilders, arguably the largest natural bodybuilding federation in the United States. Once we started recording, we realised there were just too many absolute nuggets in this conversation to start cutting things out. And also, rather than chopping it into multiple episodes, we've just left it as one full conversation as it was recorded. Sully's got an incredible background from the military through to building one of the biggest natural bodybuilding federations in the world, and he's played a huge role in shaping modern natural bodybuilding. So we cover a lot, hence the reason it's kind of a double episode. So strap in, if you're in Season A, that's your next 2 cardio sessions sorted, and if you're doing Season B, you're probably good for a week. Enjoy the episode. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back to the Macro Lounge podcast, the podcast where we talk about everything bodybuilding, bikini, and all things sparkly. I am, of course, joined today by the effervescent queen of sparkles herself, Rachel Mead, all the way live from Tauranga. We got a quick shout out to everyone listening while you're doing that fasted cardio, because everybody likes to listen to podcasts at 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't know why. Or if you're driving to the gym and thinking about doing your fasted cardio, or even just meal prepping, make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube and on Spotify. It helps us stay out of trouble with the producer. So most of the guests we have are competitors, coaches, or judges. Today we're sort of stretching the net a little bit wider today to someone who helps shapes the environment of those athletes that compete. Today's guest is Sullivan, a founder and promoter for the OCB, one of the world's leading natural bodybuilding federations. And before that, he spent a fair amount of time, which I'm sure he will tell us about, in the United States Air Force, retiring as a Command Chief Master Sergeant, which us to this part of the world, we're like, okay, what's that mean? But we'll ask that. So we're going to talk a little bit about leadership, judging, standards, drug testing, natural bodybuilding, and the future of the sport. So, Sully, welcome to the Macro Lounge.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it's so exciting to have you on, honestly. Like, it's pretty crazy for us to get people from all over the world on the podcast. Tell us, how did you get into bodybuilding? Was that something that came through, like, while you were in the military, or was it before then, after? What's the story?
Actually, the first thing that got me involved in bodybuilding.
That's not a bad name drop straight off the bat.
I was a little kid. I was 13 at the time. We were living in Columbus, Ohio, and my mom had an alcohol problem, and so we spent half our time with everything was great, and then things would derail, and this was one of those derailment times. And when things would derail, I would usually lash out at school, so it wasn't uncommon for me to be suspended. So here I am suspended on a Thursday afternoon in the middle of Columbus, Ohio, and I decided I'm just going to go start roaming the streets of the city. And I walked past this health food store, and I looked in, and there were a bunch of people there sitting around. I'd never been in a health food store in my life. I didn't know what any of this stuff was, but all I saw were these behemoths that were, flexing and doing all these things. And being an avid comic book fan, I'm like, there's Batman, there's Superman, and it just enthralled me. So of course I had to pop in, and I sit in through the entire seminar, and then this big tall guy comes in with this other little shorter guy. And he's got the Austrian accent, and he's like, does anybody have any questions? You coming to Mr. Olympia, blah, blah, blah. And, people started asking him questions, and so that I went up to him as well, and I could just tell he was the center of attention. When he walked in, everything stopped. It wasn't the guys with the 20-inch arms. It was this guy who still was jacked, but he was in clothes, and you could tell, like, this was the king walking in. And everybody was just surreal seeing how people treated him. And so I walked up to him, and he's like, "Oh, man, do you want to know how to get the triceps?" I'm like, "No, how did you get these people to like you?" And he stops for a second, and he goes, Jim, yeah, Jim. He goes, you give him the 2 tickets. And he had 2 tickets for the Mr. Olympia contest that he was going to give away. And he gave them to me. And this is something that I always talk about to bodybuilders of all likes. You are a role model, whether you like it or not, and that actions have secondary effects. Now, look at it from Arnold's perspective. Bodybuilding wasn't that big in 1978. He had 5 seats to fill at the Columbus Coliseum. He probably had 3,000 paid tickets. He was just trying to give away tickets to fill seats. But what it had done was giving me something that I could identify with. So I went and I watched the 1978 Mr. Olympia, absolutely fell in love with Frank Zane's physique, and said, this is what I want to do. And then after that, back in the old days in the Mr. Olympia, you actually kind of got the meet and greet thing with them. They did things after, and you could kind of pop and you could actually approach them and talk to them. And I ended up talking to somebody, I ended up talking to Mike Katz for a little while, who identified with immediately because, Mike was kind of, grew up in a situation where he was kind of the punching bag and found the weightlifting thing and whatever. That was kind of like my story. And then talked to a few other people, and that was it. I was hooked. I was hooked on bodybuilding. And I used bodybuilding from that point on, not just as a way to develop my physique, but I started to learn that if I applied the same lessons from my bodybuilding endeavors, from trying to train my biceps and my triceps and trying to improve my physique, I thought to myself, what else can I improve? Well, scholastically, I'm a mess. Let me see what to do there. And so then my grades improved, which improved my ranking, and just everything improved from there. So I actually, from that point on, became and had fallen in love with what I call the Zen of bodybuilding. And if any of you know anything about Frank Zane, I kind of stole that from him because everything was Zen to Frank. And that was just kind of like his thing. He was very, very, I don't know if you've ever spoken to him, very dry, very analytical, but everything, the physique was everything because it encompassed mind, body, spirit, emotion, intellect. Everything could revolve and be made better from it. And I became a believer. And I started competing. A few years after that, I was about 16 or 17 when I did my first show. Ended up competing about 160, 170 times over the years.
Don't go putting ideas in Rachel's head. She did 7 shows in 1 year, and I just about killed her. 106, you got to step your game up, Rach.
Yeah, no, I'm falling behind.
I was doing 4 or 5 a year, and at a young age, at 17, I joined the Marine Corps, and I had the opportunity to get stationed out in California. And so I was going to Vince's gym and hanging out with Vince Gironda and listening to him, and I'm at Gold's Gym, and I'm Pete Grimkowski had just bought it. I'm listening to these guys, and I'm building up knowledge, and I'm started competing, and just really fell in love with the sport. The entire time I stayed in the military, I obviously competed. I think the only year, my competitive time frame, there was only 1 year where I actually missed a season of competing, and that was because I was deployed in the Middle East. But the funny thing is we were out there training. We built chin bars and dip bars, and it was fast forward. My last deployment was in 2016, and the gyms were phenomenal, and all the FOBs in Afghanistan, Iraq, all over the place. The gyms were incredible, but back in the 90s, had nothing. And we were curling machine gun barrels and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And we had people sending us protein powders of the day, the egg protein powders and cans of tuna. We ate that. I actually came back from the deployment, and I was down in Alabama. And 3 weeks after I get back, I competed in the Mr. Lower Alabama contest 3 weeks after I returned from deployment. So competition was always a big part of my bodybuilding journey, because it meant so much to me, because it was like a benchmark of self. I was never about trying to win a title. And I always like to jokingly tell bodybuilders, I won about 35 or 40 championships, but I competed about 160 times, which means that my win-loss record sucked for any sports endeavor in the world. If I was a baseball team, a football team, a rugby team, a soccer team, I would be one of the worst in history. But that's the way that the sport is. You're always going to lose more than you're going to win. But if you do it the right way, with the right mindset, you're always going to get more out of every competition. And for me, it was the friendship building and the learning about myself that was of the paramount importance in competition for me. And that's where my love of competing came from. And then I started coaching fairly early on. It was about 1986 when Grimkowski set up the first certification for personal trainers, and that was Gold's Gym. And that was actually the first one that I'm aware of that actually had, like standards and like testing and stuff. And I jumped in, I took the course, and I became a personal trainer / coach at that over that time. I retired out of that probably about 2010. So I did that for a number of years. I started judging competition probably 1990, 91. And I competed in the entire alphabet soup. If there was a federation out there, I competed in it. Some of them no longer exist. I do have the honor, one of my favorite stories to tell. I won my height class at the NAVA Mr. Universe, the same NAVA Mr. Universe, Arnold. Yep. So I was the only natural guy in the show. And it was just one of those unique years where they just wanted that Frank Zane guy to win. And I won the trip to go to the Navi Universe in England.
Oh,
And
awesome.
Bob Gruskin, who was the president at the time, comes up to me and he's like, "Oh, Sully, we're going to send you because you won it. But we're also going to bring another guy in. And there's going to be two people in your hiking." And I knew what that meant. And he brought this guy, Victor Tara, in who had won the Mr. America the year before, and he had won the Mr. Universe. He went back and he won the Mr. Universe again. And I think there were like 22 people, 24 people in my class. I think I was 22 or 21. I think I beat like three guys. But it showed me the full landscape of bodybuilding from being natural to where you had to go to not be natural. And fortunately for me at that time, some of the natural federations were actually starting to come about and pick up steam. And I just always, I just stayed natural because my early influences were Vince, where if you used in his gym, he kicked your ass out. And also had the opportunity to be around right when Chet Yorton was starting his natural bodybuilding shows. And that's why we in the OCB ultimately named our top title after Chet, being the Yorton Cup, was named after Chet Yorton. So come full circle, 2003, OCB started as a competition federation, and we can talk more about OCB later. It started as something else. It was more of a web page and more of a chat room and a place where like fellowship. And then it turned into competition. I was patient zero. Matt Shepley was the founder and president. I was his Jiminy Cricket sitting on his shoulder. And he and I started this adventure. And now here we are 23 years later. And we started with his two shows and my one. And we're up to about 130 shows, 120 in the USA. I think we've got 15 now abroad. And, you know, we've just matured since then.
That's
so
awesome.
I know there was a lot to digest, but I just like people to understand. I'm not just cat. I'm not just some cat that came in and said, "Hey, I want to make money promoting," or "I'm going to start a federation." It was like there was a whole evolutionary process that went from flash.
I'm just feeling
back.
sorry for Rachel. She was probably writing down all those names going, she's going to text me later, go, "Who the hell was that?" And I'll be like, right, history lesson 101.
Yes.
Pre-1980, there was these things called bodybuilders.
Yeah, it's a little bit beyond my time, sorry guys. But no, I was writing down questions if you didn't see. There's so much.
Who?
No, that's insane though, like to be introduced as by like literally Arnold himself, like that is wild. That is absolutely insane.
Most people would say, I saw Arnold in a magazine and think that's what I want to be. Or a movie.
Well, I moved from Columbus, Ohio. Our family moved to Cape Cod, Massachusetts, just outside Hyannis in 1980. And that was about the time he started dating Maria Shriver. So I actually encountered Arnold probably 15 or 20 times back before he was crazy. Arnold. Yeah. Because there was only one gym on Cape Cod. And whenever you were down, you trained. Arnold obviously trained at Dunphy's. We trained at Dunphy's. We'd run into each other. A buddy of mine was a police officer, which is what got me into law enforcement, in the Barnstable Police Department, which is the town the Shrivers lived in. And they had a really great equipped gym, and he'd go and train there sometimes, and I'd bump into him there. And so it was just funny how I would just, cross paths with him. It was like no big deal. And then you fast forward, I went in 1998, I went to the Arnold Classic, and I hadn't seen Arnold in, 15 years. I mean, by that time he was, the Terminator and the Governator and every other bloody thing. And so I got the VIP thing thinking I could walk up and shake hands and he'd recognize me. And it was so like, he was so isolated. It was so like, you literally got to walk up to shake, it's like, boom. And it's like they're ushering you off. I'm trying to bump into him and I realized that he had gravitated to an entirely different status. And that's when I really had seen what bodybuilding had evolved into. And I'm just glad that I had the opportunity to be at the 1978 Mr. Olympia, as well as the 1998 Arnold Classic, and see how the changes have made. But I'm still nostalgic for 1978. That to me was...
They called it the golden era for a reason.
Yeah, I'm just... The biggest honor I've had in bodybuilding is having had a little, having had that little end slice of that golden era.
I was actually about to ask, slightly controversial to some people. What is your opinion as someone who has literally been there through that golden era and now to where we are today? I was going to ask which one you prefer, but you have kind of just answered that.
I'm going to say no comment from me on that one.
So what's it like watching the progression of the sport like through all of that? Because yeah, that was obviously considered the golden age, and there is a lot of controversial opinions about the changes in the sport. But what has it been like to witness kind of and like even just be a part of the I guess the progression of the sport from where it was back then to today? Because it's obviously very different now.
Yeah, I follow the non-natural end of bodybuilding less and less. I mean, I know some of the big names because on a YouTube channel they kind of pop in. I kind of like gravitated away from that pretty much after Dorian Yates. That era of champions was kind of like the last of my, you know, my genre of people I could really identify with. It seemed I just see like a lot more WWE World Wrestling Federation type personalities in bodybuilding now, and I'm not that's not a shot at them because that's what the sport evolved into, and that's what the fan base wants. Because when you look at the champions now, they're playing to their fan base. They're the characters that they are becoming in the non-tested arena of the sport is to attract followers, and that's what's gravitating them. So they have become what people wanted them to become, and it's not going to go back to what it was back in the 70s and very early 80s. And I understand it. I have nothing against it. The number one thing for me is the physique changes. Even when classic physique first came out, I was very excited by it, but even classic physique is also now starting to distort a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm just a byproduct of that 70s style physique. You know, your Frank Zanes, your Lee Haney's, you know, Arnold, they're gone and they're not going to come back.
It's that
so
no,
I look at old pictures.
It's the Greek god shape, like the Greek god statue. That I've always thought that should be kind of where bodybuilding is. But I mean, what do I know? I'm not a male bodybuilder as well. But that for me has always been what classic should be at least, is that you're a Greek god statue.
I still stand that Lee Haney's the greatest bodybuilder of all time. You know, he retired at 30 with 8 Olympia titles. He could have gone on forever. But I also think that look, like you said, like the Frank Zane, to me, probably one of the closest to perfect looks was Bob Paris. And he doesn't get any of the
no
love that he should, because he was around that wrong time. You know, when he was that crossover in that period of Haney through to Dorian, sort of around there. And he was also the first pro bodybuilder to come out and be openly gay. And in that particular period in time, that was no. Yeah. But that I also think the end of that golden era, and as you said, like the WWE, right? Pro bodybuilding in the IFBB Pro League world, that is like, yeah, it's no offense to those guys, but they are the WWE. I mean, I remember when they did launch a bodybuilding federation. I don't think they ever actually got one competition. I think they got one competition off the ground. And that was like 19.
It was actually two.
Was
it? And then they
had
two, and then that was it.
Yeah, then that fell over. But that was also, remember, that was the era, like you sort of talk about. It's that personality, it's that overhyped stuff. And that was like around that era, that sort of early 80s, mid 80s, when that was around. Remember, that was the time when they started drug testing pros. And then they started coming up not looking like the freaks. And then people went, we want the freaks. I mean, I think from a competitive level, you've got most people, whether they're natural or enhanced, they're not going to make the Olympia stage, right? But the competitive level, that's why you're seeing men's physique doing so well, classic physique doing so well. In New Zealand, we don't really have strong open bodybuilding classes. But at that pro level, people go to the Arnolds and they go to the Olympia to see the freak show. I mean, that's the reason that Bikini and all the ones that have the largest number of competitors in any show, they're at the expo. They're not on the main stage of the Olympia. Even Classic is only just coming in to do their finals in the main event. So it really has changed from that era. Not saying like people. What was it?
Yeah. You win Olympia in bikini, and you get X. You win bodybuilding, and you get Z, because that is driving the revenue, and that is what people are coming to see.
I always thought that it would be really interesting if they did like an actual poll on the live stream and in the audience of what category did you come to watch. It would be really interesting to actually have numbers on that, I've always thought. So I feel like live stream-wise, you would get a lot for bikini, I think. Maybe not as many as obviously the men's bodybuilding, but it would be very interesting to see the numbers across the divisions.
I think, I think you've got your global competitor scene. We're sort of going a bit off track of it, but you've got your global competitors, like, which is 99.9% of us who call ourselves bodybuilders. We're never going to be pros. We're never going to go to the Olympia. We're the driving force, right? This is where the money comes from. This is where promoters do stuff. But, it's still driven by the WWE version of the over the top, the, those elite level pro guys. That's the marketing side, but I don't think it really reflects the generalized competitive sport around the world, because there can only be one Mr. Olympia, although at the moment there seems to be 5 of them on stage at any one time, which is cool. Anyway, enough talk about the
I have another slightly controversial question.
Ooh,
So,
only one?
yeah, only one at the moment. Oh, we'll get to more later. But kind of similar to my last question. But so, what has it been like to see? Because also progression again, but this time with PEDs, like, because obviously a little bit further back they weren't as common, and then for a while they were drug testing. What's been your thought? I mean, obviously PEDs happen, but been your thoughts about how they've changed the physiques over time? Because obviously they're so common now. So I'm trying to figure out how to word this. But like, I guess what's been like kind of seeing what that's done to the sport, the introduction of PEDs and how common they've become.
They've become overly common, to the point where if you go on social media outlets now, you have 15, 16, 17-year-olds jacked out on mega doses of stuff. I see 22-year-old people that they join a gym and they don't even do their first workout before they're already on PEDs. So the thing that I've noticed about bodybuilding that I find is the most disturbing is that it is the only sport in the world where not only is extreme PED use basically condoned, all the deaths associated with it are just brushed aside. If there were as many deaths associated with a sport in any other sport, international bodies of sport would have shut those sports down and done deep dives in it. Now, I do a thing with AI where I have my AI once a month give me a rundown. Everybody in the world who has passed away with the word bodybuilder in what has happened, excluding anybody over the age of 70 or anybody who died from an accident. Looking at specifically heart attacks, aneurysms, cancers, even suicides because of the psychological effects, and age demographic and sex demographic. What I have found is an alarming trend. If you look at the data, particularly over the last 18 months, on average, 7 to 11 people are dying per year who are bodybuilders. Some have never competed. You're talking about 19-year-olds having heart attacks on their way to a stage. We're talking 22-year-old females dying from renal failure at bodybuilding shows, getting ready for their own competitions. So we're looking at that. And then you're also looking at all these obituaries and all these sad things that are happening. And, oh, hail and farewell to this great champion, and this one competed in the Mr. Olympian. At least 1 or 2 of those for these main IFBB type guys and girls. About 1 or 2 a month on social media and on YouTube, and it's all like kind of shrugged off. That to me is the alarming thing. Not what the PED use has done to the physique, which is bad enough. The way that it is the only sport where there's no accountability, where it's okay to be a coach that provides your clients with supplements, which is just open. It just happens out there, and the number of deaths associated with it and the age demographic. When I'm looking at 19, 21, 24, 26-year-olds dying of heart attacks, that's an uncommon thing. And if I see one more YouTube post about somebody who passed away and then say the COVID shot, I'm going to vomit in my mouth, because that just seems to be like the go-to. I'll say, really? Yes. So every poor bodybuilder who ever had a COVID shot also died from a heart attack at 32, 34, 35 years old. It's just, to me, that is where my disconnect to the sport comes in. I think that's where my biggest unwillingness to watch and follow comes in, because I don't want them to have my click. I don't want them to have my dollar. I don't want them to have my advertisement. It's kind of how I drew a line in the sand. So it's not about the steroid physique. It's about the secondary effects of all this.
Yeah.
And all these champions and all these coaches turn around saying, hey, everybody has their own choice. So that I revert back to the Arnold factor. A 13-year-old kid getting a ticket to a Mr. Olympia contest, and it changed his lives because you follow that, you watch that action and you follow that action.
Yeah.
And that act of kindness has always made me want to pay it forward and do something kind or something nice. So he did it on a whim, not even thinking about it. I don't know if that's his character or not. I don't know Arnold enough to know if that's really him or not. You hear the stories, you don't know. But people see this champion or this coach or this whatever, and they're going to follow that lead. So yeah, you may have an exemplary career as a PED using bodybuilder and have no health repercussions at all. But 1,000 people who followed you did exactly what you did, and 10 of them are dead.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to be a high school.
But for those,
Sorry, Chris. I'm gonna.
Sorry, go ahead.
I used to be a high school teacher, so I was constantly interacting with teenage boys who are about 15, 16 years old, and they're all talking about Sam Sulek and the Trend Twins and how they can't wait to jump on gear, and they're even doing pre-workout in class because just no particular reason. So it's it's definitely, it has a humongous effect because they look at these guys and they're like, well, that's normal, that's what I should do, and they don't see the long-term effects, and they don't care because they're teenage boys, they don't care.
No. For those of you listening on Spotify, not on YouTube, you would be. We can't really describe a lot of head shaking and sad looking eye rolls, but there's a lot of that going on at the moment. But it's true. It's like, I don't know. I think you have to divide the sport into what I call competitive bodybuilding and social media bodybuilding. And social media bodybuilding, I think, has diluted the seriousness of PED use to the point that, it's accepted. It's normal. It's, you're 18 years old, and I have clients that come to me and they're 3 months into their training and say, when do I start taking tests? And I said, when you're about 40, but it's definitely gone, that's gone a long way. But it's, there's just, you see these kids, as you said, just blasting away, and they just no comprehension of what they're going to do and what's going to go on. And it has changed the sport in general. But anyway, moving away from a depressing subject, let's get a little bit back on track here. So you were in Sully, you were in the Air Force. As your last role, I think you said, was a Command Chief Master Sergeant. For us uninitiated people, what the hell does that mean?
Well, first we have to go back, and if we're going to properly document the military career, I started in the Marines as an infantry rifleman and a scout sniper. Then I went into the Army and I became an officer, which is a commissioned officer. I made it to the rank.
Hang on, are you allowed to do that? Go from I thought there was that was a no-go zone, Marines to Army, isn't that? You get in trouble.
Well, the funny story was I did 6 years in the Marine Corps, and the only reason I got out was to go to college. So because they were encouraging me to become an officer, leadership and all that, and I'm like, okay, that sounds great. I want to do that. I ran into an Army recruiter my first day in college. I wasn't even officially out of the Marine Corps. I was on what they call terminal leave. And he was like, hey, listen, we can sign you up right now, put you in a National Guard unit or reserve unit, and we pay for your school. And in 2 years, we can commission you as an officer, and you can do that. I'm like, sounds great. Let's do that. And so, cool. Why not? You paid for my school, and we did that. And so I went that route, and then I became a rotary wing helicopter pilot. I flew Cobra attack helicopters, OH-58 Scout helicopters, and then I went into my last few years. I was in a medevac role, flying UH. I did that for 12 years, 4 of it on active duty, and then the rest of it in the Guard. And I was in the National Guard, which is the reserves, so 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks per year. I know you have reserve units down in New Zealand, Australia as well. And I was a police officer. And I was, at the time, I was also a SWAT police officer, so I was on the SWAT team. I was trying to get my flight time in. I was trying to do all these different things and navigate a family. And so I got out. I just resigned my commission, didn't want to be an officer anymore, didn't want to fly anymore. I did, but I didn't have the time. Something had to break. And it's like I can't sustain, as much as I love flying, as much as I love commanding. I was a commander at the time. I had eight aircraft assigned under my command, 16 pilots and 124 enlisted people. And as much as I loved that, I knew it was non-sustainable with being, dad and everything else. And so I put it aside and said, you know what, I'm going to go back to that at a later date and pick up where I left off. Fast forward a couple of years, 9/11 happens. About a year later, we're still sitting on the sidelines, and I'm like, no more of this. No, I went in. And so when I went to go back in, I found out that my unit that I was flying with, I got reassigned to new aircraft, and I had to take another flight physical where they found out that I had some deterioration in my vision and I couldn't get a flight waiver. And so I'm like, I know what I want to do now. And I ran into an Air Force recruiter because there was an Air Force unit right outside the same base. And that Air Force guy said, hey, listen, you want to come do the Air Force? We can do anything. You could be an officer. You could do this. You could do that. And the other thing. And I'm like, what are the jobs? And they had this job in what was called combat communications, where you're still building tents and carrying a rifle and you have a rucksack and you're on the side of a mountain doing communications for all these different people. And I'm like, that sounds good. That's my style Air Force. I can't fly F-15s. I can't do anything else. I want to do that. But I don't want to do it as an officer because they didn't have any officer vacancies. Well, so I went back to being an enlisted person. And over the years, I went through all the enlisted ranks and I made it to what is Command Chief Master Sergeant. Now, Command Chief Master Sergeant is the highest enlisted rank. And when you put the command in front of that, it means that you are working at the highest echelons of command, the highest groupings. And I was, for the state of Massachusetts, the senior enlisted person for the National Guard. So I worked directly for a 2-star general. I was her number one. And, we bounce everything. So you're in all the same meetings, all the same strategy sessions, all the same planning with all the other officers, doing all the strategic things, whether it's a mass deployment of troops or a theater-based combat operation or just responding to a disaster. You're right there, and the two of you are working together. They are the strategic vision, and I am the one that is working all the X's and O's on the enlisted force to make everything work together synergistically. So that's why, out of all the things I did in the military, the thing I'm the most proud of was having been a command chief, because I was a captain in the Army. There's probably 200,000 captains in the Army. I was a pilot. There's probably 100,000 pilots. Less than 0.1% of all enlisted people in the Air Force make it to command chief. So that to me was my greatest honor of having been chosen and selected, given that opportunity by my leadership. So 40 years plus serving in a uniform in one capacity or others. I just always like to jokingly say, your military people out there will understand it. 3 different branches of the service, about 15 different jobs, and having been enlisted, officer, and then back to enlisted, I think I'm a unicorn, because wherever I've gone, whatever militaries I talk to, or whatever, when people see my shadow box, the thing that you do in the military when you retire in American military after 20 years or more, they give you a shadow box. It has all your awards, your decorations, your badges of all the things you've accomplished, and all your patches or whatever. Whenever everybody sees that, who's been in the military, they look at it and they're like, wait, is this a joke? I'm like, no, I kind of did bounce around and do all that stuff.
Let me say, is there anything you didn't do?
I've never run for public office, and I never will, ever.
Yeah, I could. No, I would get in trouble.
Absolutely, absolutely. So how do you go from all of that to then running a bodybuilding federation? Because that is a little bit of a change.
I love to say that I have lived my entire life in the toy store of occupations. I love being a police officer, but I'll be the first to say I had a great police career. I made it all the way up to the rank of lieutenant, which is a command position. I actually commanded the SWAT team. I ran the detective division. And as great, as prestigious as that sounds, I always like to say I was never that good of a cop. There are some cops that just have that street instinct. What made me a good cop was I would always defer to the other guys. Like if I was the sergeant in charge, and we were doing a detective thing and we were investigating a murder or something like that, I'd always defer. What do you got? Okay, yeah. And we would get the best ideas together. We'd come up with a group with the best plan forward. So they were the good cops. I just got the opportunity it was a great career. I never even thought about it. I did 25 years of that. Being in the military, I loved every second of it. Every miserable deployment, every time I got shot at, every bomb that went off, every 5 a.m. 5-mile run. I loved every single second of it because it's the group of people that you're with, that tribe, that family that you're with. And now bodybuilding. And the one thing that is the same in all of those professions is that police officers are a clique. They stick together. They're family. All right. Military, they're family. They're a tribe. And natural bodybuilders are their own tribe as well. And so I've always belonged to these different tribes. A lot of of the navigating them, a lot of what you get out of it, what you put into it is all the same. So for me, going from police to military to helping run the organization was seamless. It was just absolutely seamless. I work harder now than I did any of these other careers, but in a totally different way. And the other thing that's different is the servant leadership part of it. When you are a police officer, you are a servant. You work for the people. When you are a leader in the military, you're working for your people. And when you run a bodybuilding federation, if you do it correctly and you run shows properly, you're doing it for the shiny people on stage and for no other reason. You are trying to make it epic, memorable, from the person who wins all the way down to the person who places last. It should be meaningful to every single one of them. And if they know you care about the time that they put in to get on that stage and you want to present them with the best possible experience, it's the same type of inner reward that you get from leading a good mission or from, saving somebody's life as a police officer. It all ties in the same way. So that same
Rachel's
joy and
writing.
satisfaction.
Rachel's watching me bite my tongue so hard now. I'm looking down thinking, is she texting me going, shut up? She knows what I'm thinking. Yeah, I promoters in the world take note of what Sully just said. Well, that's all I'm going to say on that. So again, I think it comes back. So what leadership lessons from your military, police, and the service aspect, as you said, how have you found that that's translated into running the OCB? Or I would imagine there's quite a lot of crossover there, but
There's a lot of crossover. Here's the thing with the OCB is people think it started as a federation. It didn't. The OCB was a culture. As I said, it started off as a website, and Matt was a
a chat
promoter for
group.
chat group. Yeah, back in the days where they had chat group. Rachel, you
Rachel's
would
like,
never
what?
understand this, but this is when we had rotary phones, and we still signaled each other with mirrors. But it started off as a chat group. Now, Matt was a promoter for the WNBF, but he really didn't care for the politics involved and the way he was treated and the way they treated competitors or whatever. So he put all this time and effort into this group that was just like-minded individuals that were trying to help each other, and we created a culture. And then around 2003, Matt said, "Hey, listen, I'm not going to promote WNBF anymore. I'm going to promote my own thing. I'm going to call it OCB, which is what the website was called. It was the Organization of Competitive Bodybuilders, and now it's Organization of Competitive Bodies. So because it's more than bodybuilding now, and so I'm just going to call it that. And at the time, I was looking to promote a show for the prominent federation in America at the time, the ANBC, American Natural Bodybuilding Conference. And I said, you know what, Matt? I'm with you. I'm with you, brother. I'm sick and tired of the politics. I'm sick and tired of, going to a show, and if I'm not the winner, it's like, yeah, take your crap and go, well, look at this guy, he won. And I don't like a lot of this stuff. If you're coach A, you get your own special dressing room with your people. If you're coach B, go sit in the back with their luggage. I want to do this too, and we were going to run it the same way. And we did. And what happened was I had so many friends from bodybuilding that people saw what I was doing and the experience that competitors were having at Matt's shows and my shows. And they're like, I want to defect. I'm like, well, we don't take defectors, but we'll add a promoter if you want to come. And we went from 3 shows to 9 shows to 25 shows to 35 shows in the first 4 or 5 years. And it started to build up from there. So I stayed involved the entire time, and Matt single-handedly ran the organization, but I always loved to tell him that anytime he tried to give me a role as president or this or that or whatever, I always tell him, one, the titles mean nothing. Because people who get involved with titles, they want to become the title. It becomes about the title, like, from the desk of so-and-so. We weren't that. We were Matt and Sully, and we were trying to lead a different type of group of people, these competitors. We were trying to lead promoters. And the other reason is because I always wanted to have the right to say if there was something that he wanted to do that I felt was stupid. I always wanted to have the right to be able to tell him that his head was up his derriere and that the villagers were going to grab their torches and pitchforks and come storm his castle if he did that stupid crap and not have to worry about it affecting anything because he was my boss in some way. And so we maintained that relationship until about 5 years ago. The OCB had grown to like 90 shows, and it was just too big for one person. And there were other people that were helping out in different roles. And Matt came to me. We had this long conversation. I remember I was driving cross country, and I think we talked for 5 hours about leadership and developing teams. And he's like, what do I need for a team? And I said, one thing you need is somebody who is a strategic planner, somebody who has a vision for where you want it to go far, far, far ahead, far ahead. They have to be focused there. You need to have a relationship builder, somebody that's that person that's there that keeps the team together. And you have to realize your team isn't just the people leading it. Your team is your promoters, your judges, your tabulators, your expediters, your urinalysis collectors. If you're doing something for the organization, you're part of the team. And you need that relationship builder to be there to get that input from them, because they need to have a say in the organization, as well as to disseminate information to them without it being downward driven. It can't be, from the desk of the president. And so you need to have that relationship builder. And then I gave all these different people that you need. You need to have somebody with a technical expertise, because you're going to have to improve websites and this and that. And I gave him the whole structure that we would use in the military to build a command cell. And he took some time. And then when he decided he was going to sell the OCB, he tapped each one of us. And when I look at the OCB leadership group, we call ourselves a leadership group, ownership group. There's 4 of us. Each one of us plays that role to a T, but it's not a role. It's who we are as people. And so we have that. And so there's no one person who is the boss, so to speak. We run it as a collective. And at the same time, part of that collective is also the promoters. It's also the judges. Every Wednesday, I have a promoter and judges sync meeting for everybody that is going to be promoting a show the following weekend. We have some weekends we have 8, 9 shows. And so that's a lot of people that are on that meeting to disseminate information to them to make sure that their needs are met. Mentoring becomes a big thing. Mentoring is vitally important in the military, vitally important in police work. If you're not mentored properly, you fail. And so we have mentorship for our judges. We have mentorship for our promoters. So we created a structure that we can move forward with that has become our culture. And we also have a bench built. So if I get hit by a beer truck tomorrow, there is somebody that is going to be the new Sully, takes over, steps into the role, understands the role because they've been exposed to it, and they are handling things at a lower level, and also, working things with us that can slide in seamlessly. So the one thing I always like to say about the OCB that makes us different is that Matt assembled a leadership team. Most federations are a musclehead who says, me start federation, me do my way. You don't like it, highway. We don't pull that crap. Everybody has a say. Now, it doesn't mean that if all the promoters get together and say, hey, listen, we want everybody to wear a clown nose and booties on stage, that we're going to say yes. But we will put tiger teams together to find out the viability of it. But if we're going to enact a policy, our policy has to be fair, steeped in ethical responsibility, feasible, defendable, and repeatable. Otherwise, why have it as a policy? It's just going to be gobbledygook that nobody's going to follow. So these are all the things that we do that are a little different. And I'm not saying this to diminish from any organization at all. I love all natural bodybuilding organizations. I really do, because I competed in all of them. I still have friends in all of them. I have friends that own other bodybuilding organizations in America that compete as pros in the OCB because they want to be treated fairly. And, they run their organizations totally different than we do. And there's something there for everybody. And it doesn't matter. Even if you think you've built the best mousetrap in the world, 49% of the people are going to hate you and want to go left. So there's room for everybody in bodybuilding and natural bodybuilding. It's just that we just do it a little bit differently. And when you look at our command structure, our leadership team, you have somebody that has 25 to 30 years in education and management. You have 3 of us are prior military service people. One of us was a government civilian, a GS-13, which is one of the highest rankings for government civilian that ran whole entire segments of the government. I had me as a command chief. So you have all these people that have all this leadership experience in other areas that were brought in together. So there's no headbutting. There's no competition. We don't compete. It's the other thing we train our promoters. You're not competing against each other. You're building together. So we're very strategic when we add a show or we add a promoter. I would say we interview, out of every 10 promoters we interview, we might accept 3. Out of every 10 people that want to put a show here, we might take 1, because they have to fit into the collective. They have to understand the culture and be part of the culture. And we're not going to add shows to add shows. We could have 250 shows, 300 shows in America right now if we wanted to. But we would have 300 shows competing against each other, getting 15 or 20 competitors at each show, where right now our average turnout for natural bodybuilding, our average number of athletes in an OCB show in America is quickly approaching 70 to 80. And that's different athletes. That's not crossovers, that's bodies. All right. I just held a show 2 weeks ago during a blizzard in Atlantic City, New Jersey, here in America, and I had 130 people show up on stage. If we put 15 shows in Atlantic City, because 15 people want them, you'd have 15 people that would have, 9 competitors per show preying on each other, competing with each other for resources instead of putting a teamwork together in a geographical area and people building together. And that's pretty much what Lisa is doing in Australia now. Now, Lisa was our first foreign promoter. We didn't want to move outside the United States. But Lisa came and competed in a bunch of shows in America, and she did an OCB show. And she came up to Marjorie, one of the co-owners, after that and said, "Oh my God, are all your shows like this?" And Marjorie was like, "Yeah, go hit 2 or 3 more while you're here. You'll see. This is us. This is our culture. We make sure every single show has its own flavor, but they're like snowflakes. Okay, every show in the OCB is like a snowflake. Each snowflake is absolutely unique, but every snowflake has the same properties. It's H2O frozen below 32 degrees Fahrenheit that creates snow. That's the OCB. So everyone's different, but everyone is the same experience." And she was like, "I got to bring this to Australia." And we went, "Yes, we never thought about it." That was 2 years ago. Now we are in Spain, England, Canada, Italy, Portugal, Australia, Brazil, Colombia, Chile, France. I'm missing Saudi Arabia. I'm missing a couple more. We got like 13 countries. And that was all because of Lisa.
That's crazy.
Because she was the one who fostered that. And one of the things
note to self, get Lisa. We have to reach out to Lisa.
You got to get Lisa on. Number one, she's a great women's physique competitor. But the show that she promotes out there, I mean, I've only seen it by video. I will be there this year. I'll be boots on the ground at her show. I'll be landing in Brisbane the week before. I'm going to be hanging out in gyms and doing seminars and coaches clinics.
I may well be there with you.
Hey, I would love to see it. I also run, and you know this, I also run coaches clinics. So if there's ever a show that goes into a new geographic area and coaches want to understand what is the look and what are we looking for, I train the coaches to the same standard that I train the judges, because there should be no discrepancy between what a coach understands and prepares the client for and what the judges are trained to look for. Because what is the ultimate goal? To give that competitor the best possible experience. And if you're always hiding behind the curtain what you're really looking for, and you have all these shifting standards, and you can never figure it out, and the target's always moving, and you don't know what you're doing, it frustrates the coaches, it frustrates the hell out of the competitors, and it makes the judges look incompetent. So I run coaches clinics too. So if anybody down under, who's in Australia, anywhere,
he did that well.
Let me know. I will host one for you.
Okay, Brenda, take note. Now, see, this is completely blowing. My question was going to say, for listeners who might not be familiar with the OCB.
That's insane. That would save you so many complaints as well, because a lot of the complaints of bodybuilding is people not understanding why someone was chosen as a winner, or like what's happening to the criteria, blah, blah, blah. So that saves you a lot of that controversy of just saying like, here's the criteria, let's explain it to everyone. Let's explain it to the coaches, to the judges, get everyone on the same page. And that just makes it so much more cohesive.
Well, just to give you...
Yeah, it would still, yeah.
Somebody will still come up and go, I read the criteria, I think I should have won. You're still going to get that.
Yeah, but it'll be less.
Yeah. But they always have a voice with us. Yeah. Another thing that we do is that's a little bit different, and I think that I really need to point this out to any of your listeners, that if they go to the OCB show in Australia, that they will see this, because this is part of our culture. It doesn't matter how many times you go on stage or who you beat the time before. Our judges are trained every single time a group of competitors comes out, it's a clean slate. So there are flip-flops. I have judged for organizations that have told me, write down who they were and make sure you place them in that same ranking every time out, because we don't want to see flip-flops because it creates controversy. To which I always said, then why are they paying 75, 80, 90, $100 to cross over into two other categories? Why don't you just bring them out one time and be done with it? It didn't seem right. And the other thing is,
You would have made a few enemies with some promoters just doing that. They would be like, what?
Oh no, we adhere to that. That is, and when we do competitor meetings beforehand, if I'm ever there, I let the competitors and coaches know, and that's why I turn around and say, coaches, your role is key now. If you see your men's physique competitor not flaring his lats from the rear, and it just cost them first place, if you go back there and tell them, flare your lats, dumb arse, and they do it the next time out, and the judges deem that to be the best physique, he could go from third to first. I mean, I have seen figure competitors go from fourth to first because they were standing narrow from the rear pose. And how can you win the pose if everybody's wider than you? So you won 3 poses out of 4, in a tight lineup that might drop you down 2 or 3 places. Her coach went back and yelled at her. And then she also didn't have her legs flexed. She came out the next class out with her legs flexed and her lats spread. Boom, she bounced up to first. And there were some coaches that were upset, but they understood why. They understood why. But
That's
the
one
other
thing
thing
I always
is,
love
I
about
review
Rachel.
every single tabulation sheet every single week. If an error is ever found, and our judges know, our judges are trained. When you see it, you don't walk by it. You call the ball and you stop the show. We have shows get stopped, not frequently, but every now and again. That's not what I had. That's not what I had. File them off stage. You go back out. You rescore, and then you bring them out in the correct order. If it gets missed, I have found 2 weeks after a show, I'll go back and finally get to a tabulation sheet, and I'll look and go, you weren't third, you were first, and you weren't first, you were fifth. And we make the adjustment, and we get it all out, and we do it right. We do it right. Integrity of the process is number one.
I've seen some social media comments recently about some OCB shows where that's had, and you get a bunch of negative trolls saying, and predominantly in the States, I've seen it come from other major federation promoters saying, well, that would never happen in our thing. That's quite true. It would never happen because you don't have the balls to say, we fucked up. We got this wrong. You have to fix it. You can't do it. You can't.
Judge and a premier natural bodybuilding federation's world championships in Boston, and it happened. And I pointed it out, and I was told to shut the F up. It never got corrected. And not only did I never judge for them again, I was never asked to come back again. So yes, not only does it happen, I know firsthand it does happen, and you get told to have a big old cup of shut the F up. So take all the shots that you want at the OCB. Yeah. At the end of the day, don't you want to know how you really placed?
Yeah. Look, I always said when I was judging, and I judged for near on 20 odd years across the IFBB Federation, PC USA, PC Worldwide, IFBB Pro League, all that sort of stuff. I always said post my scorecard. I have no problem in people seeing my individual ones. And when I see a score sheet that's got 7 judges and all of them have got 1 through 10 in the exact same freaking order, I'm calling bullshit because it doesn't happen. I mean, that's the thing. That's why you have individual judges. But anyway, I'll get in trouble for that. So obviously, natural bodybuilding has grown massively in the last 5-10 years in particular. And it's also spread across a lot of federations. Some we've seen stick around, some we've seen fall over, particularly here in New Zealand. They sort of stick their heads up and then they, some of the international federations, and they go. We're quite a small market. Obviously, in the US, since the split between IFBB Pro League and IFBB Amateur, NPC recently has introduced their natural division. I have a fairly controversial opinion on that, but I keep that to myself. So from your perspective, though, where does the OCB sit in the landscape, both domestically in the US and obviously now as it's progressing into more, getting a little bit more international coverage? Where do you see the OCB sitting in that landscape?
In the landscape in America is we're number one. It's not, and I'm not saying that. It sounds cocky and it sounds like I'm trying to diminish the other federations. I do not want it to sound that way at all. It's just, you just got to look at the demographics and the facts. We have more shows. We never cancel a show. We have more competitors. We have more pros. We have more prize money. I mean, this year we're awarding $270,000 in guaranteed prize money. We don't do the wiffle waffle iron where I know there's one popular natural federation that says, up to $200,000 $100,000 in prize money. Look at the fine print. If 75 people compete in bodybuilding, we'll be there. We have another federation where I know some of our top pros competed in October, and they're still waiting for their checks if they're going to get one. So when you just look at number of competitors, number of shows, number of promoters, and just the market share of what's happening in natural bodybuilding, we're number one. Now the NPC is number one in all of bodybuilding, in all of by a lot. They're probably 10 times bigger than the OCB, but if you take
You're
all the
talking
other
about
natural
NPC natural?
NPC, not NPC natural, NPC period.
Yep.
Now, if you look at NPC natural, I know that they're making a push. Some shows they're putting money and effort into. Most they're not.
Well,
It's
most
not
it's
really
it's a
resonating.
division within the show, isn't
Yeah.
it? They do.
Yeah, and a lot
It's
of
they're
it
doing two
is.
shows in one day, and you're like going,
A lot of it is. Um, I applaud the NPC's effort, and the more they've talked about natural bodybuilding, the more we've grown because they've legitimized natural bodybuilding in America, and the more we've grown. But I mean, we just look at demographics and just Virginia, the state I'm here in. I'm sure you're familiar with who Linda Murray is, and Linda Murray
yeah.
held a competition here in Virginia, and she was pulling in 230, 240 competitors right here, right outside of Richmond for a decade. She no longer promotes in Virginia. She moved 2 states away because her show deteriorated and dried up into nothing. And our 5 Richmond shows are all pulling in the hundreds. So, that's not, typical of all areas. There's some areas some states that are firmly, NPC will always rule natural or otherwise, but it is at least increasing awareness of natural bodybuilding. So when people Google, like get ChatGPT and you pull up, natural bodybuilding organizations, OCB is either number 1 or number 2.
Yeah,
And then,
that's what Reddit says as well, if that helps. We all know I like to scroll Reddit, and whenever somebody asks the question, I want to do natural bodybuilding, what federation should I do? Usually the answer is OCB. So you do have the backup of all the anonymous people on Reddit as well. So
thank you, Reddit.
yay!
Internationally, we're still growing.
Yeah. So, I mean, speaking of kind of international, if you turn pro in OCB, what is the progression from there? Because, like, most people know, like, how, like, the IFBB works. You get to the pro level, there is higher level pro shows, and then there's also the Olympia and the Arnold. What is the progression like as a pro in the OCB?
The number 1 show is the Yorton Cup. Now, Yorton this year, we had 200 and almost 290 pro bodybuilders only. The Yorton Cup is a pro-only event. And this is why I say in natural bodybuilding, I know that there are other world championships that you look at, and they'll pull 250, 260 competitors, but they'll have 150 pros. We had 289 pro athletes over a 2-day event competing for $77,000 in guaranteed prize money. And that top 3 share $11,000 for their prize money. And all other pro shows, and we have them sprinkled all over the country, all of the pro shows, the prize is $3,000 US. So it's $1,500 for first, $1,000 for second, $500 for first, guaranteed. If 3 people show up, guess what? You only had to beat 2 people to get $1,500. If 20 people show up, it's still $3,000. And for our international competitors, we don't have international shows right now. So what we do, if you win your pro card, we waive the entry fee for the Yorton Cup. So all you have to do is activate your pro membership. You don't have to pay your entry fee. You come to the United States, you can compete at the Yorton Cup and other pro shows. So if you decide, listen, Yorton Cup is in September, I don't want to compete in September. Hey, Sully, you're promoting this Hall of Fame thing in Lexington, Massachusetts. I want to go do that one. Come on down. Enjoy. We want you to have a good time. Until we can benchmark and get there, I absolutely positively believe within the next couple of years, we will have a pro show in Europe, and we will have a pro show somewhere in your hemisphere, somewhere down there as we keep growing. Because there's other countries down there that are talking to us that want to add OCB events. As it grows, we will add it in fairness. We do want to also eventually get a tier 2 show. Kind of like you have the Olympia and the Arnold. We're looking at kind of doing the same thing. We were looking at Las Vegas as a possible location, so we're on 2 different coasts, whatever. But now we're trying to gravitate, if it's $11,000 per class for the Yorton, and it's $3,000 per class for every other pro show, what would be applicable for the number 2 show? 8,000, 7, so we're looking at that because money matters. The other thing is the amount of money that we invest into the drug testing, because as a pro, for the pro shows, the amount of urinalysis testing that gets involved, we use an IOC laboratory, so each urinalysis test is like 200 something, $230, $240 US. That also has to get factored. So when you look at the Yorton Cup for that 2-day event, and I strongly urge people, if you haven't watched the Yorton Cup, jump on YouTube. We have like last year's Yorton Cup. You can see the stage we do. You can see how we try to make it a very special event. I mean, swag alone, we set aside about a third of the entry fee just to give them backpacks and shirts and hats, and we want to swag them out because you can only have 3 champions earning money. So it's the cost of these things. Right now, organizationally, let's just put it this way. All 4 of us either still have our day jobs or are collecting retirement checks because this is a money-making scheme for us because we put so much back into the organization. So the Yorton Cup alone is $290,000 to promote. So that's a one-way street. You're not collecting that back. That is our gift to bodybuilding. And now we're trying to build up to have a second one of those that would be nice if it kind of broke even. And would we want to add an amateur to that only, or should it be a standalone pro show? So these are all things that are in the works, along with a European pro show, eventually one down the Southern Hemisphere, eventually one down in your neck of the woods. So trying to spread a few out and to allow that to happen. But as of right now, you order your pro card, Yorton Cup, free entry, my friend. And you don't have to requalify. No requalification.
2 questions, just going over a little bit over what you brought up there, Sully. So obviously OCB is growing not just domestically in the US, but internationally, as you said, with Spain, Italy, Canada, etc. So 2 questions. How important is that international expansion for the OCB Federation, like bringing in new athletes or whatever? And secondly, from the amateur side, obviously you mentioned the testing side for the pros. What's the testing for the amateurs as well?
The first question, how important is our international growth? We don't prioritize it. We've never really prioritized growth. What we prioritize is our culture, exporting our culture, making sure that people we bring in meet our values, have the same mindset, can integrate into our team. And if they happen to be in Kansas City or the moon, it doesn't matter, then that's where we're going to put a show. The other thing is with other natural federations that I've dealt with, it's like each country is its own governing body that kind of feeds into a pro division, but they kind of have their standards and do their thing. And in OCB, if you want to promote, in Paraguay, you can promote OCB in Paraguay, but you're still going to have to meet the policies, the conditions, the standards, the boundaries of OCB. And then you'll be running your show. You're not starting your own country federation and doing your own thing and having your own judges and your own politics and your own standards and your own drug testing. No, you're doing your own show your way, but you're doing it in our left and right boundaries. So therefore, growth for the sake of growth is not important to us at all. It's the right people at the right time, at the right places, that have the right mindset, that want to be part of the collective. You're welcome. Come on, you're welcome. Talk to us and we'll put something together. For amateurs have the same criteria as pros. Here's the difference. In the pros, at a pro show, you urinalysis test the top 3, and then you random urinalysis 10%. 100% of the people have a screening. Now, that screening could be polygraph, it could be voice stress analysis, it could be the eye thing, we have a lot of different methodologies to use, so we're not hooked in on one. However, we do use polygraph the most because it has the most proven statistical science behind it. If there is a new methodology that comes out that's validated by science, that has a better process, that has a better track record of the same, we'll jump on it. We're not stone dead on that. When it comes to urinalysis testing, or when it comes to doing that, it's the same urinalysis testing for the amateurs, but we only urine test the winner of the amateur show. So whoever wins their pro card also has to take a urinalysis test. We can also do blood testing, and we're also working with our laboratory about other testing methodologies to use. Now, the big question always becomes, how come you don't do blood? Well, it's because we talk to our laboratory people all the damn time, and it depends on what you're looking for and how far back you want to go. A urinalysis test still has the best bang for the buck for the majority of the substances that you're looking for. Blood testing sounds great if you're trying to find one or two key markers taken over a much shorter span of time and you're looking for more specifics. So if we think we're looking for something, we can fall back on that for a specific person. But overall, an in-depth urinalysis test is still going to give you the best bang for the buck. You can get into, hair analysis and all these other things, but now you're talking about genetic burn time and blah, blah, blah. Now you've just priced yourself out of the market. It's just, there's no way it could sustain it. Is it a technology available to us through our laboratory? Anytime we want to use it. Do we ever see a point where we use it? Not when the urinalysis testing is doing what it's supposed to do.
You mentioned obviously the cost that's associated with you as an organization and a promoter from the drug testing, and I'm sure most people, when you mentioned, I think it was $230,000 US for drug testing for the Orton Cup, everybody probably went, ugh. What is the standard entry fee for an OCB show in the US? And is that for the additional fee per class, or is it you?
That's the other thing that differentiates us in the OCB over other organizations. Two differences. One, in the OCB, once you win a pro card, you are a pro in all categories of your gender. So you don't compete as a pro in bikini and then in figure as an amateur trying to get another pro card to do this, to try to go back and get that's a money grab. We don't do that. Also, if you look at each and every category has its own distinctive symmetry. By symmetry, I'm not talking about top or bottom balance. I am talking about if you black out the silhouette of a wellness competitor, a bikini competitor, a figure competitor, and a women's physique competitor, they should look totally different. So to turn around and have a show where, and I've seen this happen, and I just saw it happen in results in another federation. The same dude won men's physique, bodybuilding, and classic physique. And the same girl won figure and bikini and was second
Figure
in
and
wellness.
bikini.
I'm just pointing to Rachel because she's got 2 pro cards in one show.
I won 3. Three
Yeah,
divisions.
she won 3
But
classes.
to be fair, the criteria does say similar. So the criteria does say similar to bikini for both of the other ones, because it was swimsuit and runway.
If it's and for OCB, it's like each category has its own level of definition for a set point. Each category has its own level of mass for a set point, and each category has its own symmetry for a set point. This is where we can easily differentiate and not get carried away looking at a group of competitors. It's the greatest figure competitor you've seen in your life in bikini.
Yeah.
You're probably going to place really, really low because you're in the wrong category.
I definitely would not place in figure.
So when you compete as an OCB pro, you're only going to enter one class, but you're going to enter whatever class that you want to. So you can win your pro card as a bodybuilder and say, you know what, I want to try classic. Go for it.
What about amateurs?
Amateurs the same. One category per competitor. That is it. Yeah. Wow. Does it mean that promoters don't make as much money? Absolutely. But it's not a money grab. But it's not a money grab.
And it would also make the shows not run quite as long, because that's always a very frequent complaint by competitors and coaches and judges is, oh my God, the day is so long. And then because you're not having the same people show up for 4 or 5 different classes, wouldn't go.
And you realize that the OCB runs a straight through format. We run a live judge format, which means that, let's say you're a bikini competitor, you are told to report at 3 o'clock to be on stage. You're out of there by 5:30, 6 o'clock. I mean, you come in, you do your thing, and you go out. And, we've done that since day one. That every show runs that way.
One of the things you mentioned earlier, Sully, was about the training that you do for the coaches and also for the judges. You and I, when we first met, because I have some clients in the States that wanted to do OCB, and I was literally like, I don't know nothing about the OCB. And, my background is obviously NPC, IFBB, ICN. And just so everybody knows, his credit, Sully took quite an extended period of his time, actually. And we went through all of the classes, all the divisions, what they were looking for, what the judges were, what the criteria was. And that's why with Team Bold, we're taking, and the other thing is also you allow international competitors to come in and do the show. So that we were like, well, we're going to bring in we've got a team for going to the OCB Slayer Classic in Phoenix on 1st of August. So shout out if anybody's interested in going to try an OCB and want to come along and have some babysitters, flick me a message. We'll be there. I think we've got 6 girls go. So obviously you went through with that as well. Like you talk through how the judging is done, what each criteria is. And I think that's really, really refreshing, where what you're seeing, I think particularly in some of the NPC and IFBB, there is a lack of clarity, and Rachel and I talked about this just recently with the new fit model division. There is a lack of clarity as to not only what the federation is looking for, but as far as I'm aware, there is no longer any actual judging training. And there is certainly no coaching training, as if you're coaching an athlete in our federation, this is what we look for. Because coaches always like to say they know, but the reality of it is, if it's not coming from the horse's mouth, how the hell do we know? I think it's interesting that you guys do all that.
Yeah, definitely. That's a big thing that me and Chris have talked about a few times is, doing training for judges across, like with the international as well, because often you get different standards in different countries. So like Australia tends to lean towards conditioning across a lot of federations. Same with Europe, they tend to be very hard. So there's a lot of different discrepancies across international countries. So it's great to have that, I guess, training for the judges so everyone stays on the same page.
Yeah, doing a lot of the international judges training now. We've developed a way that, because the class that I teach a 3.5 or 4 hour block of instruction, followed by a comprehensive exam. And then there's also a test judging segment to it. But the test judging segment we have to waive for, in New Zealand, if you end up putting a show in New Zealand, where are you going to test judge? You're going to, fly to Arizona to test judge. So I'm trying to develop tools where you can get test judging experience by watching video. As you know, video and photos is not the best way to judge anything. I have seen people that look so phenomenal in a photo, but I've judged them and I'm like, yeah, the camera's kind to you. You didn't look like that on stage. And the same with people in video where like, you looked great, but the video, and not ideal, but at least it's a tool to get you there. So these are things that we take seriously. But I also have I have a good friend that is in that 3-letter organization that judges, and he says that he basically told me, judging is the easiest thing in the world. You just wait for the head judge to put first in the middle, second here, third here, fourth here, and fifth there, and you put that down, and nobody cares how 6th through 12th place. As a matter of fact, they usually stop at 8, and then everybody's 9 after that. And then, it's the easiest thing in the world to judge. And I'm like, wow, okay. We could do it that way, but we're going to do something different. And in the OCB, middle don't mean squat. I train judges on angular geometry. And here's what I mean by angular geometry. If you have first in the middle all the time, and then you have a 7-person judging panel, and you have judges on the wings, they're always going to be looking at that competitor from a different angle. So my hand here is at a knife's edge because I'm looking at it from the center. But when I'm looking at it from here, it looks totally different. And when I look at it from here, it looks totally different. So what our judges do is the first thing they assess is the symmetry of the category, making sure everybody meets the symmetry. The ones who meet it the best, they kind of put together, and then they do a deep dive to see who possesses all the qualities. So it's not whoever has the best symmetry wins. They just make sure that they don't have the really great figure competitor in bikini. We can't look at you. You're a great figure competitor, but we have to focus on the bikini girls. And then they move them to the far right and then to the far left so that everybody sees everything from the same geometric angle. So it's the same thing that you learn when I got this from SWAT. It's the same thing you learn when you're trying to go through open spaces or you're trying to engage targets, whatever. It's angular geometry and how it looks from different. I was doing that training for SWAT and I go, oh my God, same thing happens in judging physiques, but they always put first in the middle. Anytime I'm at the end, it screws me up. So I can tell when like I said, I evaluate all the tabulation sheets. So I can tell when I look at the tabulation sheets if a head judge didn't do that because I can tell by judge 1 and 7 where their scores fall. Or if they kept everybody only on one side and didn't put them on the other side, judges 1, 2, 3, and 4 have this, and judges 4, 5, 6, and 7 have it. So, you can see
That's
these
not
things and
different
then retrain the
from
head judge.
yeah, that's not different from how not that widely different from how I was trained in the IFBB amateur days. It was like you move them around, and frequently as a head judge, I would mess with people by not putting them 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yep.
5. Sometimes I would just for shits and giggles, I would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or I wouldn't do it at all, and just especially if I was training new judges, because I'd be like, all right, let's see what you do, and invariably, quite frequently, they'd all put first the one that was in the middle. I might have them fifth. And it'd be like, okay, we need a bit more education on that one. But I think that's really great. You go through that with them. I think there's a lot of validity into scoring the judges so that, look, they're human. It's a subjective sport. They've got opinions. Yes, you've got criteria. Yes, you've got all of this sort of stuff. The other thing you mentioned was basically there's multiple points, right? When you think about it, I always say to people, you have to think of when you're judging, particularly in probably more so in the bodybuilding classes and say the bikini and with the wellness and so. But you've got a certain number of poses. You have to score all of them individually, as opposed to you can tell an inexperienced judge or an immature judge when they are scoring off that first impression. This has happened before in competitions. It's happened in New Zealand. It's happened with Rachel in the past as well. Fortunately, Rachel's a really good poser and also listens very, very well. So she's, it also goes out there with the attitude to win. So she's like, don't mess with me, I've got this. But it's, you've got all of those poses. So you can't just go on that. And people do that online, or as you said, they see that photo and this girl had the best front pose and the best back pose. And you're like, yeah, but there were transitions. There was the walk, there was this, there was that. If it's men's bodybuilding, you've got 8 different poses. That's at least 8 different points in my book. Or you've got 4 quarter turns. That's 12 points. You've got to write all this stuff down. Invariably, though, there is just, where'd the head judge put them?
Yeah.
And follow through. So
I always tell judges, if you don't have a headache, even if it's only 40 competitors in a show, if you don't have a headache at the end of the show from judging, then you didn't do it right, because it's got to be demanding and taxing. And exactly what you said, each pose, that's the biggest thing that I had to break judges from is, like a bodybuilder. Because I was at a bodybuilding show and, one judge had this bodybuilder first. And I'm like, okay, I'm just curious, why do you have that bodybuilder first? Did you see the front and back lat spread on that guy? I said, yes, but did you see the non-existent side chest, the flat biceps in the front double bicep, the lack of triceps in the side tricep, no abdominal development? He won 2 poses. Yeah, but did you see? I see the same thing in bikini. They turn around and face the rear. Like I had a judge that I had to put in retraining because, I'm like, oh yeah, you have that competitor. I have her in third. What do you have for? Well, I judge bikini from the rear. Okay, so that's the only thing you look at is their back pose. Well, yeah, because it's bikini. Okay, then why do we have a front pose and why do we have the walk to the curtain? I mean, you're not looking at the S curve from the front. You're not, it's just like these lights are just like, oh, now I'm getting it. It's like, yes. And so that's why I do so much now, because I was training one judge at a time when I was at a show, and I'm like, you know what? No. Now, every Wednesday before you judge, I don't care if you judge 10 shows. That's 10 Wednesdays out of your life. You're going to be on that meeting, and we're going to go back through this. I'm going to evaluate your score sheets. I'm going to call, the headmaster is going to call you in for retraining. If I think that there's any nepotism or if I think that there's any malfeasance or misfeasance, I'm going to remove you as a judge. How do I do that? You forget I was a detective for 15 years. I turn around and I lurk on your social media page. I know who your friends are. I know who your family members are. I know you did not excuse yourself from the judges panel, because our judges are not allowed to judge a teammate, a client, or a family member. They have to unask themselves and sit in the back of the auditorium. They can't even stay seated at the judges table and influence the judges table.
I know where you live.
That you score, I know where to find you.
That was one of the primary reasons that I retired from judging, was when I sort of went primarily, focusing full-time on coaching athletes. I ethically, and in a market New Zealand size where it's so small, I cannot judge you if I'm coaching you. And as a judge, I never followed anybody on social media. They were like, oh, now you follow me. It's like, I don't care what you look like on social media. I will show up, do my job. And if you walk in and you're looking great, then I'm going to reward you based on what you're putting in front of me. I don't want to see what's going on in your life. I take what I do seriously. And when I'm judging, that's the primary focus. And I think, ethically, you can't judge somebody that you coach. Honestly, I would be harder on Rachel if I was judging her. I would be like, you didn't do what I told you to do. Even if she did, I'd be like, nah, that's what you should have.
She pissed me off today.
I think, it's like, you didn't eat your damn rice. I know. Didn't. But I think there is a lot of that where it sort of comes back to one of the biggest frustrations competitors talk about is judging. So, athletes commonly misunderstand how judging actually works, because a lot of them still think, like particularly in bikini and wellness and even figure to a certain extent, they still think it's a beauty contest. It's the and I've seen judges do it as well. So they first walk, the girl walks out and she is stunning, and they don't look at anything else. They don't wait for the turn. They don't look for the curves. They don't look for the symmetry. They don't look for it. They're just like, wow, she is just beautiful. And you're like, yep, she is. Yeah. But she's got no glutes from the side, and she's got none of this. Yeah,
my best judges are the ones that when they walk up afterwards, they see him after, and somebody points them out, and they're like, did she compete? Because they don't recognize the face, because they focused in on the physique. And, and that's the other thing with OCB is everything is physique based. You are placed based on your physique. Now, where does hair, tan, makeup, and suit come in? Differentiators. Happens a lot in bikini. And Rich, as you know, there are a lot of great bikini competitors. So you have to factor those things in sometimes, to see what you get. But if you were to come into an OCB event and you were the greatest bikini competitor physique-wise we'd ever seen, and your hair's disheveled, you forgot to get your makeup, you didn't bling your shoes, you just got an off-the-rack suit, and your tan is, but you're the best competitor we've ever seen, you're going to win. Now, in the judges' feedback, you're going to be told, when you bring that physique to a pro stage and you go in like that, you're not going to win because everybody's as good as you. But we'll always award the physique over everything else. Those differentiators are important when it's close. And many, there's not a lot of shows anymore anywhere that are just like so cut and dry that, like all 7 categories come out and it's like, yep, 1, everybody had first. They're close. Yeah. And that's why you have to pay attention
Which is what you want.
Things.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is what you want as an athlete and what you want as a judge. And as you mentioned before, it's about the face. I've had people come up to me immediately after a show, whilst we're just packing up at the judges' table, and they've got a robe on and everything. They're like, "Can I get some feedback, please?" And I'm looking at them going, "I got no clue who you are."
What color suit were you wearing? That's my question. I'll remember that.
What was your competitor number?
Yeah. Let me look at my notes. Oh, yeah. Okay, I remember now.
I followed you from the neck down.
Yeah. No. But I think that is obviously, I really like again, it goes back to that, making sure the coaches understand, make sure the athletes understand what the criteria is. And I think that goes a long way to allowing athletes, as they look at OCB, into understanding how you work and what to look for.
I do want to come back to, sorry, because I know that OCB is obviously, it's very pronounced as a natural federation. So I do want to touch on the testing a little bit more, because that's obviously a huge part of natural bodybuilding. There's obviously a lot of controversy about what goes into testing, and I guess people cheating. If it's done. You have mentioned like the standards of when it gets tested, but how do you make sure that the athletes coming into OCB who are natural trust that these systems are happening and they're in place, and that anyone who is caught will be caught, and they're not just going to be like, that happened, go away, shove it under the rug?
Because every competitor gets a urinalysis test, they get their test result. We don't know every single competitor. If you can find an OCB competitor that took a urinalysis test that did not receive the urinalysis test results to validate the test, I'll give you $100. Also, we do have failures, but here's the thing. Legality. There are legalities in sports that different federations don't, it's only a matter of time before Hall of Shame gets sued legitimately. We only know these things because they've happened. Okay. So there are things like that. So we do not ever publicize a name. There are recourses. Okay. We utilize a WADA system for our failures. So it's not just the failure 7 years off with your head. There is a process that is involved. If there's a T to E ratio, if your testosterone to estrogen ratio is low, there's another test that you can take called an IRMS test that will go in depth on sample B, because we break it into a sample A and a sample B, that will take your sample B and do an in-depth spectroanalysis test to find out if that testosterone was created in the body or outside the body. It can determine all these things. If you tell us it's a supplement thing and you've got your supplement, they're testing it. There's a whole process. So it's not just we randomly select you, you never see your results, and all of a sudden you go up in a hall of shame and you're out. There's a whole process. But throughout that process, it is a closed chain of custody. Now, here's a funny thing. We had a situation at the Yorton Cup where an athlete failed. That athlete was told by the two people in the leadership group. I am not one of those people, but the two people in the leadership group, our pro membership director and also our drug testing director, our urinalysis and drug testing director, were the only two people that know. The pro membership director, because they might have to freeze or suspend a membership, and they're also responsible for issuing out the prize money. The drug testing person, because they're directly testing with the lab. This person turned around and sent a mass email with like 15 names on it, talking about this, that, and the other thing, and then reaching out to me, and I'm like, I didn't even know any of this. I promoted the Yorton Cup this year, so I was the promoter, but I don't know yet as the promoter. I don't know until the process gets to the very end. And then we know because we just eliminate the name from the results. So people always say, how come the OCB doesn't post the placements from the shows right away? We give it a good 3 months to make sure we've gone through, if there's a failure, we've gone through any processes. Unfortunately for us, we don't have that many failures. We'll end up with we probably have 12 to 15 urine failures per year, and we probably have 40 to 60 polygraph failures per year. But we do not broadcast that. That is between the tester, the individual, the membership director, and our drug czar. And then the promoter will eventually know, because they're going to have to change the results on the results page and flip somebody out. And even they don't know. Like, I wouldn't know the reason that this person got eliminated if they hadn't told me, professing their innocence, that, not me, couldn't have been me, not my urine, the typical things that you hear. I wouldn't have known until I was told, yeah, remove so-and-so and bump up, all the other placements for that. And, that's how they're going to be placed. I could assume, and I'd probably be correct, but I wouldn't have that inside information. Excuse me. So it's kept very close to the vet, but competitors find out all the time. They just figure it out. They're like, all right, I came in fourth, and now I'm third.
Who's missing?
What happened? Or I did that show, and so is in the other class, but their name isn't on there, and I think that they placed second, but they're not there anymore. So the competitors usually figure it out, but we do not post it, and we don't do a hall of shame. And every single person, whether it's a pass or a fail, gets the urinalysis test results back. And like I said, they have the whole hearing process, the whole process involved. It's not, the OCB is not just you failed, you're done, go. There is a process. And also the punishment has to fit the crime. Like, we've had people that it's gotten out that people figure out, well, they must have failed for something, because they're not in the show anymore, and you stripped them from the prize money. They're not on there, but now they're competing 6 months later. What's up with that? Not every substance is a 7-year, suspension or 7-year ban. If you fail for, let's say you failed because, you took an ephedra-based cold medicine. Ephedra is banned for 6 months. You get popped on it. You're going to get suspended for 6 months. That doesn't mean you can't compete for 7 years. It's for 6 months. Everything, there's a fairness factor involved. There's a hearing factor involved. There's a whole process and everything. We don't just throw it at the wall and hope it sticks. Trust us, we've been through the grinder, talking to attorneys. Our chain of custody is solid as shiznit.
Is it real?
Downside to the being in the States.
You are not going to challenge our chain of custody. And if you do fail and you want to challenge it, bring it on, because we win those all the time. In fact, it doesn't even get to that point. Attorney X contacts us, and we have our own attorney. That's the other thing about the OCB, is we don't just pick one out of the phone book. We have one on staff. She gets the call, she handles it from there, and it's like, do we have any? No, they got it. I'm like, okay, cool. All
Cool.
right, move from
Awesome.
there. But our thing is we never want to get somebody, back in on a technicality. That's the worst feeling in the world is, because you muff something up. You're not presenting them with their results. You're not doing things in accordance with WADA and how the governing body expects things to be done. They're not being done in a fair. Like I said, it's got to be fair, repeatable. Repeatable, number one, done the
Mm.
exact same way every single time. It's all got to be there. And the only thing I was going to say earlier is like, people are like, oh yeah, that also sounds good, Sully. How come everybody doesn't do that? I'm sure they would like to. You got to remember, we have 4 people putting in between 40 and 60 hours per week into the federation in their respective lanes. What I'm talking to you about is my lane. So I can spend all this time on judging, all this time on looking at tabulators, all this time training credit. I can go to all these shows. I can do that because that's my lane. And then,
Right.
our drug testings can do all that stuff with urinalysis testing and talking to labs and doing all that's their lane. So we have people that's your lane. You have a left and right boundary. Now we're all cross trained. Like I said, if somebody goes on vacation or something happens, we can fill in those gaps,
Yeah.
but we don't interfere, so there's no duplication of effort. And when you're focusing in on what you need to accomplish, and you have your task list, and you have your left and right boundary, and you're doing your thing, you generally tend not to miss things. And again,
That's a
that just comes
that's
into our
a lot of
ability
work
because
for
a lot
a
of work.
lot of work for 4 people.
Yeah.
All right, so we're
One
gonna move on.
job.
Yeah, no, I got enough trouble keeping up with Rachel. She gives me too much to do. Made me do a whole bunch of silly reels this weekend, which her and my wife have turned into a series of memes, which I'm really not looking forward to.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it was a lot. So we always like to do a couple of things with each of these episodes. We do a thing called controversy kicker, where basically Rachel and I will put you under the. We're going to practice your interrogation techniques. So controversy kickers, we're going to ask you a series of questions, which you're allowed 30 seconds to answer. No criminal incrimination there. And then we move on to a rapid fire section where you have to say the first thing that comes into your mind. So we're going to turn the little proverbial spotlight on you. So starting off with the controversy kickers, I'll go first. So are natural and enhanced bodybuilding fundamentally different sports, or are they just branches of the same sport?
They're fundamentally different sports because when you're looking at the TV using bodybuilder, you have totally different rules for bodybuilding. Now, when I look at bodybuilding, I look at the whole spectrum: how you diet, how you train, what you eat, what you can get away with, where you're taking your supplements, and what the physique looks like that you're being judged by. Totally different in each realm. Are they in the same ballpark? They're in the same ballpark, but they're essentially different sports. It's like comparing American football and rugby. The ball looks the same, the guys look the same, the scrums kind of look the same, but the sports are executed totally differently.
You get brownie points just for that last bit. You can come down and visit this part of the world. You're safe. All right, what do you got there, Rachel?
All right, so we talked about the alphabet soup of bodybuilding federations. We also call it the alphabet. But do you think having so many federations, does that help grow the sport or confuse the athletes?
The individual federations want to handle themselves and their business. It confuses the sport when they talk about things like, sharing and this and that, and too many federations are destroying the sport. It enhances the sport when it gives competitors an opportunity to try different federations and different cultures and do different things. In America, we hear all the time from some of these federations of they hate the OCB because they're not doing anything to unify the sport. Well, kind of we are. And here's why. Our athletes have no restrictions, no reprisals, can compete anywhere they want to, and are encouraged to do so. We tell our athletes all the time, go try the federations. And if you like us, come back to us, because if you come back, we did something right. And you might bring a friend with you. What's going to grow the sport more than that? So I think that it's both, based on how the federations handle their own business and what they are saying to their own masses.
Mic drop. Okay, what must a federation do to convince competitors testing is legitimate? Does it require out of competition?
Does it require what's that?
Out of season testing.
Yes, I absolutely positively do. The OCB has random urinalysis testing for all pros. We also have a 10% rule where we can random test 10% of the athletes at any show. Like if I go to a show, at an amateur show, I can grab 10% of the athletes. It's in competition, so it's not random off season, but I do think that random off season urinalysis testing for pros is the best way to legitimize your entire training program. So when our pros show up at a show, if one of the leadership group or we have 5 other people involved, so there's 9 of us. If one of the 9 of us are at a show and we have a pro athlete that's off season, that's judging or just shows up to watch, they're going to get a tap on the shoulder and say, "Follow me," and they're going to do a random urinalysis test.
You turn around and go,
So
Not creepy at all.
well, we get that all the time.
Follow me.
I'll sometimes screw around with them. If I see him there, I'll walk on. I'll have a specimen cup and I'll walk by the judges table and I'll look at them. Just kidding. We got you guys last year. But no, I think that it is essential to legitimize your sport because there are so many substances that can be taken for shorter periods of time that can enhance the physique.
Yeah, it's so crazy how like bodybuilding just is so different from all the other sports because most other sports you don't really need to do drug testing all the time. Like when I was swimming, like no one really thought about drug testing because like it's just not a common thing. I guess unless you're at the Olympics, then it obviously gets a bit more serious. But even amateurs in bodybuilding, it's just crazy how much it's needed. So that might actually give us the answer for the next question. But what do you think is the biggest challenge that natural bodybuilding is going to face in the next 10 years?
All of the new peptides and new drugs that are coming in because things are coming out faster than the testing procedures can keep up with them. And all the new products that are coming out that their half-lives are so short, it's going to continue to be a process and a problem. And even though we are utilizing polygraph as a screening methodology to get there are all different ways that people are being given substances that they have no idea what they're taking from a coach. That gives them plausible deniability, and that's how they can get through a polygraph screening. You know, when it comes to a polygraph, you can only ask a finite number of questions, and you have to ask each question 3 times. You can't ask 50 questions. Like, you know, if you can only have 1 or 2 target questions, they're going to be based on the drug, not on, were you given a pill to take that you didn't know about, or this to take? But you know what I'm saying? It is just the substances are developing faster than the technology.
All right.
So we're going to do some rapid fire questions now before we wrap things up. So first thing that comes to your mind, can't think about it, can't go back and take it back, just straight out the bat. All right, I'll go first. First bodybuilding show you attended?
1978 Mr. Olympia, Columbus, Ohio.
Well, it's start at the top. Yeah, okay.
What is a harder environment? Is it military training or peak week?
Peak week.
Wow.
One thing competitors obsess over that judges couldn't care less about.
Shoes.
Shoes. How many sparkles are on your shoes? Yeah, that probably is one. What is more important, conditioning, symmetry, or stage presence? We're going to probably talk more for the girls here.
Symmetry.
What's more disciplined, military discipline or bodybuilding discipline?
Bodybuilding discipline.
Crazy. That's why probably so many military people do really well in bodybuilding.
The military was just a way of life for me. It was just so easy for me. You know, bodybuilding was always harder.
Fair enough.
Probably for 99% of the population would answer that differently, I guess.
Probably.
What is the biggest mistake that competitors make when walking on stage?
Worrying about the placement, not the moment in time.
I like it. One word describing a great competitor.
Whoa.
That was a good one.
That's a good one.
What's cooler? Classic posing trunks. Obviously, this is not for yourself, but just in general, classic posing trunks or sparkly bikinis with rhinestones.
Classic bikinis with rhinestones.
Yeah. You're allowed. You're accepted. I think the guys should be allowed sparkles.
I want some rhinestones.
I think so too. All right. Which military branch would dominate a bodybuilding show?
Marines.
Seeing you've been in 3 of them.
Marines.
If you had to... Oh, well, I mean, that kind of... You've answered that one. If you had to compete tomorrow, would you wear the sparkly bikini or the classic posing trunks? Or maybe just sparkly posing trunks?
Sparkly bikini.
I'm
making a statement, girl. If I'm coming back, I'm making a statement.
I love it.
Rachel will make you a prototype version and send it to you. She's been dying to do a sparkly men's suit. Oh dear.
We must have sparkles on everything. Yeah.
All right, Sully. We always like to end these episodes with guests where we like to give you the floor. So if you would like to outline the next 30, 60 seconds, what projects are coming up for the OCB, any upcoming shows or initiatives or competitors should know, and also how do they find you and the Federation?
working on now is our OCB TV lineup. So we have OCB Natural Edge. It's a podcast as on Spotify and iTunes, as well as on the YouTube channel. And we're also launching Trisets, which is where it's going to be like a magazine feature. We're going to have 3 shorts from different competitors that are different, doing highlights, interviews, cooking, etc. And the reason we're trying to capitalize on this is because when you go into social media or on YouTube and you type in bodybuilding, everything is the PED stuff. Everything in bodybuilding. There's so little natural bodybuilding stuff out there that we're trying to provide valid, useful information on a reoccurring basis. We're trying to highlight natural athletes and profile what they're doing and get interviews out there and to highlight different shows, etc., in the natural spectrum to give people that satisfaction of saying, I'm on YouTube too, and I wasn't a Mr. or Miss Olympia. And so that's the greatest perspective. That's one thing that we're really strongly working on, but we're always working 24/7 on trying to maintain our culture and make sure that our promoters are properly mentored and that our competitors are having the best possible experience, whether they're coming in and placing first or last. We don't want to run competitions. We want to run festivals of muscle and feminine beauty. And then to find me, I am Sultop96 on Instagram. I also promote about 5 or 6 different shows within the OCB as well. So I'm on all of those. Or just come visit OCB Natural Edge. Go check that out. As a matter of fact, at 5 p.m. earlier today, so Eastern time, so that would be 3 hours ago for y'all down there, we dropped a new episode where I cover body stomatotypes to include 2 body stomatotypes that nobody talks about, the ectomeso and the endomeso, and how to properly train based on your body stomatotype. And also that the body stomatotype is not a total blueprint, but it does kind of give you some idea of what things would work best for you and why.
Awesome. Great. And also, of course, ocbonline.com, where all things, some federation stuff on there as well. You can definitely, it's a very good resource tool with some of the criteria and everything on there as well. So definitely check that out.
And visit us on the OCB official page. So that's on Instagram, OCB official page. I think I don't know how many followers we got on that. I don't know, maybe 100,000 now. I know it's ridiculous, but a lot of good content down there too. A lot of good reels from shows. You can really see what we're trying to put out there.
Awesome. Well, that about concludes today. Thank you very much for your time, Sully. We appreciate you sharing some of the insight into OCB and drug-free bodybuilding across the planet in general. Hopefully, you're going to be at the Slayer in Phoenix, so we can see you there. And we might have to talk to the boss about perhaps popping across the ditch and at the end of August, although it might be a hard sell after I've just got back from a trip to the States. But I'll give it the best crack. And seeing as she's editing that, she's already going like hell. But you never know; it might happen. So we'll give it a crack.
Or she could be saying, "This Sully guy is so fascinating. I'm gonna go talk to him."
Exactly. She could do, or she'll say, "Rachel and I will go, and you'll stay at home," which is
there
probably
you go. I like that. I like that too. Rachel can bring me a blinged out suit.
I can. I absolutely.
Don't tempt her. Don't tempt her. She's still got to make me a blinged out. I'm known for I'm one of those weird coaches that when I go to a show, which everybody's sort of got a bit known about it. I always wear a suit. So my theory is they dress up. And this year I actually matched mine to Rachel's bikini. I went all out. I pushed it, but it was like,
awesome.
Everyone's like, did you guys do that on purpose? We're like, no, it was a mistake.
Email
but she's
me
promised
pictures.
me a rhinestone jacket at some stage. I'm just not sure how I'm going to wear it because I think it'll weigh about 30 kilos.
Yeah, I might have to start with a tie. I think just a tie to start with.
Or maybe just sequins. Sequins would work. I could do. Yeah,
I need to figure out how to make a jacket first. It's a little bit different from my usual expertise. But thank you so much for coming on, Sully. It was absolutely amazing to talk to you because, wow, your life is just like speechless. Beyond what most of us in New Zealand can really imagine, like being part of all 3 military disciplines, coming into bodybuilding, it's just crazy. So thank you so much for joining us today. And to all the listeners, before you go, if you enjoyed this episode or found it helpful, make sure you like, follow, and subscribe on both YouTube and Spotify. It does help keep us going and reach more athletes. And we will see you all next Monday.
And next week, we will bring back our Sharon's division, or otherwise known as Brooks Follies. So keep those things coming in because we've got quite a few to get through. And we'll see you guys all next Monday, bright and early, for that fasted cardio.
Enjoy.